You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here is your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
I am Coach Jen from Ocala, Florida.
And I'm Mary Kitzmiller from Kemp, Texas. And you are listening to Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for July 4th, episode 3468, brought to you by NutriBites from Equine Balance Support. Good morning, Horse World.
What is your favorite day of the week?
You never stop learning. You never stop understanding. It's more in depth than just riding a horse. Knowing that for the rest of my life I could work on this and I'll never stop learning.
Happy 4th of July, Mary.
Yay! Best time of the year for horses. Exactly.
So a quick question. We didn't think about this before the show started, but have you ever had a animal in your care that had the real, honest to goodness, genuine, we're not training this away, fear of thunder, lightning, loud noises?
Honestly, no. Even my wild Mustangs, and I think it's because most of my horses live in a herd setting. And so if the majority are like, it's whatever, then any horse that might be newer or more flighty just kind of goes, well, they're not freaking out about it. So I personally haven't experienced any horse with like a severe fear of any kind. And like I said, I do credit probably my other horses that have been here a while and, you know, it's a calm herd situation. And so they just kind of, that good energy, I think, just helps feed into keeping all the other horses calm as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think horses are hardwired to learn from one another in a herd situation. That's what keeps them alive. That's what kept them alive for a few millennia. So that makes perfect sense that if you have a herd of horses that is established and balanced and well sorted out, when you add a new member in there, that he wants to become a member of the herd. That's what he wants to do. And it makes sense that he uses them to gauge what he should be afraid of and what he shouldn't.
Exactly. And I think turnout is so underrated on just how it makes a horse just so well-rounded. I think when horses know that they have room to move if they need to, they feel a lot more calm. If they feel trapped in any way, that's where you can get some really kind of scary behavior and more flightiness because they don't know where to go or what to do. And so I think being able to have movement, being able to have your buddies nearby, it does make a difference.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. And it's quite the reverse when you have that horse who has quite literally spent their life in a stall. He gets turned out every single day for 45 minutes and he gets hand locked twice a day for 15 minutes, but the stall is his safe place. They're going to have that reverse reaction. You leave them out and they have agoraphobia. They're afraid of that wide open space, but that can change. It's very interesting. When I got Nigel, he had spent a fair amount of his life living in a stall. He was your typical in the barn all day, out at night kind of a horse before he came to me. Whereas we keep our horses out 24/7 as much as safely possible. And last year, a couple of feral cows were in the woods adjacent to to Nigel and Scooter's field. And Nigel and Scooter have a barn where Scooter goes in to eat his breakfast every day because that way he can't savage Nigel. But for 3 days, while those cattle, and we didn't know what they were out there. All we knew was that the horses were freaking out hourly and they would all day long, all night. We didn't know what was going on. They would not come into the barn to eat. We would go in there. Hey, breakfast time. They would not go in there. They were happy to eat their meal, but not in the barn. They would not go in there. They would stop dead. They would run away from you because for them, being able to run around and get away from those scary feral cows, that was safety to them. It was very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's just the good lesson is that it's important that they all have a safe space. And yeah, cows in the
Very
woods
interesting.
are way scarier than cows in the field. I've
Are
got
they?
a wooded, yes, oh my gosh. So I've got a wooded area right next to my arena that it's a whole cow pasture, but then there's like this grove of trees right by that fence line. So when the cows walk into those trees, it scares the bejesus out of my colts, even some colts that are like that have seen and worked cattle, because that's pretty scary.
Interesting. I never knew that. Learn something every day. So cows in the woods, innately scary.
Yes, yes. You don't want your cows hiding.
There you go. Well, something that is not innately scary is our show coming up. If you're new to the Mary Kitzmiller episode on Horses in the Morning, we get together about once a month and we chit chat about all things horses and training. And we always answer a couple of listener questions, and we will get to that in a little bit later. If you want to submit a listener question to the monthly Mary Kitzmiller show, you need to be on the HRN Auditors Facebook page. And if you want to be on the HRN Auditors Facebook page, you need to be an auditor. And in order to be an auditor, you need to go to Horse Radio Network, click on the Horses in the Morning link, and right there it will tell you how to become an auditor through Patreon. Helps support the hosts here on Horse Radio Network, and you get to enjoy some perks like asking questions of Mary Kitzmiller and others. But we always start
That was
the
a
show.
mouthful.
That was a mouthful. We always start the show with a little bit of a training tip. So I thought a good topic for today's show would be your epic show season, which I followed with great enthusiasm on your Facebook page. Things went your way this year. Just great scores, great result. Even days that the result wasn't quite what you thought it could be, you felt like you had a lot of really good rounds. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the strategy at the beginning of the season, how things panned out, and maybe some things you're going to build on for next season. Because despite the fact that you compete in one discipline, these topics and these methods really do apply to anybody, regardless of what kind of competitions you do. But to give newbies a little bit of background, tell us who Remy is and what discipline you compete in.
Remy is my Mustang that I have owned since 2018. He was actually my competition horse for that year's Extreme Mustang Makeover. So I got him as a totally wild Mustang. And the last few years, I've been showing him in an association called Stock Horse of Texas, which is a really, really fun association and event that combines, there's 4 different categories. So 4 different classes that you go and show in. There's cow work, there's reining, there's ranch trail, and there's ranch pleasure, which is like a rail class where they judge you on the gate. And so every show, the shows are obviously all over Texas, and then they've got a big year-end. We call it the World Show, but it's really mostly Texas people. And so they do awards, they do year-end awards for the total year, they do awards for the World Show, and they do individual awards and buckles for each show during the year. So we've been doing that pretty seriously, I'd say the last 3 years, or this is our 3rd year. And I'm showing him in the level 1 open. So it's a class for professionals. The level 1 is 1 step down from the open class. So if you've only earned so much money in a Western performance event, you can qualify for the level 1, which is Remy and I. And when we started out doing it, we would do pretty good, but usually by the end of the show, when they would show the all-around awards, like the people, they average out all 4 of your classes and they show the all-around high point earners, we would usually be at the bottom. And then last year we did pretty good and we were, about middle of the pack. And this year, I checked the numbers for who's in first so far for the year. And I was really surprised to find out that it was Remy and me. And so that's been really exciting. We also won our very first individual belt buckle this year over in Lubbock, Texas. So he won the division for that show. So it's been really fun and exciting. And hopefully we can hang on to it. It's going to be really tough. We're about halfway through our year.
About halfway through. Wow, you've got a lot to go yet.
Yes. Yes. I got another one coming up in Amarillo in a few weeks.
So at the beginning of the season, do you create a season-long strategy, this is where we hope to be training plan or anything like that? Or is it more day to day, week to week?
I think each show lets me know what I need to work on. And that's the beauty about showing is, when you're at home and you get an idea of where you are training wise and think, well, we're pretty good at this. And when you go to a show and you've got to put it all on the line, go into that arena, put your hand down, show off your horse. They will tell you what needs work. And so there have been times where I go into the cow class and the cow goes one way and Remy's like, I'm not going that way. And so that tells me, okay, I need to go home and work on getting him more responsive on the cow. And maybe we need to do more rollbacks. Or another one that we find challenging is in the trail class, you have to do lope over poles and jog over poles. And so there's all these obstacles that you ride the horse over. And if you tick one log, that's a penalty. And so we will be doing amazing in the trail class and we tick 2 logs. So then I know, okay, I got to go home. We got to work on lifting his feet up over the log. So I let each show tell me what I'm working on to get ready for the next show. And it's just we're just constantly being challenged and figuring out what needs to get better. And again, that's what I love about shows is it really helps you to sharpen up your game.
So as the season continues, what are some of the things that you think you did in the previous shows that are going to be helping the ones coming up, or the previous training sessions for that matter?
Yeah. So what it's really teaching me, and this was something that I learned in the Mustang makeovers as well, is when I pull up to a show, I know that there are going to be people who are better than me. They have better horse than I have in terms of, this is a reining bred horse and they were $30,000. And that horse is going to just go in that reining pen and kill it. They're going to have the big sliding stops and the fast turns. And as much as I love dear Remy, that's just not, he's kind of more of a drafty little guy. And so we're just not going to have those big stops and turns. So what I've really learned is to find the things in the pattern that other people aren't going to pay attention to because they're trying to get the big maneuvers looking really cool. So little things like when in the reining patterns, we have large circles and small circles. And it's not as precise in the dressage where you have to hit the shoulder at this letter in the pen, get that perfect 20-meter circle. But you do need really balanced circles. You do need to hit the center of that pen. You don't want to be 20 feet off of it. Both circles need to be the same size. And so those are things that you might not pay attention to as much. But it gets you just as big a score as a big sliding stop. So we've been able to actually even win some of our reining classes this year is I'm going to make those circles beautiful. I'm going to make sure my horse looks willingly guided, that I'm not having to pull on him to go through the circles. I'm going to make those circles balanced, big, pretty. So that's what showing has really taught me is you don't have to have the most expensive horse in the show pen or the flashiest horse in the show pen. You can still get a really good score if you work on precision and just having a really good clean run.
That is a very interesting thing because I think you're right. Dressage is probably the closest analog, but that probably goes for your most disciplines in that if you have the basics genuinely solid, you don't necessarily have to have the fanciest horse to get a good score or a good ribbon. Especially,
it's worth noting that in these shows that we're going to, they are probably 99% registered quarter horses that are very well bred and very well trained. And I've got a $600 Mustang. And so, you don't, obviously having the horse that's bred to do it, and that's a huge advantage. But no matter what breed you're showing, your horse has to want to do it. They have to, you don't want a horse that's just really, really not suited for it. But you can hold your own even if you don't have the fanciest horse in the barn.
And that, I think, also is the advantage to competing in disciplines that ask the horse to be a multitasker versus if you're competing in, it's particularly hard in hunters and equitation, because the horse does two things. He jumps a course and he goes on the rail. That's it. So the skill set required is very, very narrow. So that, when I'm going to use my air quotes, that fanciness level is going to have a lot of play into it versus versatility classes or perhaps eventing. Certain types of endurance, believe it or not, require multitasking because it's not just the endurance part. So if you're one of those people who has a horse who's amazing and fun to train, and you have that relationship that the horse wants to please and wants to do what you want to do, looking for disciplines that require a wide range of skills or allow a wide range of skills might give you a little more satisfaction and a little more impetus to continue to do those competitions, because a lot of people, they don't compete because they don't have the fancy horse. It's like, well, I can't win anyway. Why bother? There are so many different places you compete and different types of sports you can compete in nowadays. To poke around at some of these newer ones or smaller ones or more regional ones that allow the multitasking horse, the horse that shines at being trained and the rider that shines at developing the relationship, to find a great deal of success. Cool. Not where I expected this conversation to go, but great light bulb moments just the same.
Yeah, and that these ranch type events have really exploded in popularity because it is being an all-around horse, and there are all sorts of associations coming out of the woodwork where your horse has to show a variety of skills. It can be a real challenge, and for instance, in this particular association, the horses that maybe really kick butt in the cow work, they can have trouble in the trail because you've got a horse that's bred to like react and look at everything. Like, this cow moved a quarter of an inch, so I need to be over here. Then you have to turn around and take them into a class where they just need to ignore everything. Like, I'm picking up a scary rain slicker off of this mailbox and you need to stand still and just accept it. So it's a real challenge, and it's such good training for any horse to go through. And especially with these ranch classes, they've really put an emphasis on this horse needs to be a good using horse. He needs to be happy in his job, head up, ears forward. They're not looking for style so much as, man, this horse really likes this job. He's got good, clean gaits. He listens to his rider, and that's a good mark for any horse to have.
There we go. And speaking of happy in their job, something that's helps a lot of horses be happy in their job is an occasional cookie, whether you give that cookie from your hand or toss it in a bucket. And NutriBites from Equine Balanced Support are a great, healthy way to give your horses treats. Your equine athlete deserves a treat that goes way beyond just yummy. That's why Grazer's NutriBites from Equine Balanced Support was created. These delicious bites are packed with natural performance-boosting ingredients like wheat germ oil for a natural source of vitamin E, and kelp, known far and wide for its rich source of vitamins and minerals. And that's not all. Grazer's NutriBites are also metabolically safe, making them a great choice for horses with special dietary needs. Reward your horse for a job well done, all while supporting their overall health and well-being. Visit equinebalancedsupport.com today and discover how Grazer's NutriBites can elevate your horse's performance naturally. That's equinebalancedsupport.com. And I think, Mary, you've tried these, haven't you?
I feed a lot of treats when I ride because I'm using the Art Plus training, especially with my show horse. And I've been using these little guys, and they're bigger than a Timothy pellet, which I really, really like. They smell amazing. They've got peppermint oil in them. My horse loves it. So this year, I've actually doubled my treat ration for when I go to a show because I do a lot of treat training at the show. And I have to say, my results have been a lot better.
And now it's time for the listener Q&A. How are we starting it out today, girlfriend?
Let's go with a question from Kendra. And her question is, how do you handle a situation where a horse is in full-on fight or flight panic mode? For example, a group of bicyclists go by or a flock of turkeys cross your path and you're either leading or riding and just can't let the horse go or easily get away from the scary thing. That's a terrific question. So most horse training, ideally, we want to happen when the horse is not in fight, flight, or panic. If the horse goes into that zone, we want to get them back down because they just simply can't learn. They can't take in information when they're in that spot because in the horse's brain, all he cares about is survival, and he will do whatever it takes to survive. So it's just not a great area to be in. So when we're training, we want to keep the horse away from that, from that panic zone. And if they get into that zone, we want to bring them back down. However, we cannot always prevent them going there. They're a prey animal. They're built to survive. And, sometimes we do all our training at home and it's all perfect. And then we get on the trail and the cyclists ride by too close and our horse panics. So even though ideally that would never happen, we don't ever want that to happen. The reality of the situation is it's probably gonna in that horse's lifetime. So I think about this all the time when I'm working with Mustangs and when I'm starting colts. Any horse I'm training, I always have it in my brain, what if? So the very first lessons, for instance, the very first thing I teach a wild Mustang is to look at me, give me two eyes. If you give me two eyes, you're going to be safe. And I want to drill that into that horse's mind of anytime you're unsure, give me two eyes. And why do I want them to give me two eyes? Because if they're looking at me, I can probably hang on to that lead rope and get control of them. If a horse is looking at me, but they're running sideways, I can still hang on to that lead rope. If they're looking at me and running backwards, I can still hang on to that lead rope. So I still have control of the situation, even though maybe I can't make my horse stand perfectly still right in this moment. If it's a situation where I'm riding the horse, one of the very first things I teach that horse is to yield his hindquarters, because I may not always be able to stop my horse with two reins. If they take off running and bolting and I try and pull as hard as I can on two reins, if that horse really wants to go, they can take that bit and go. So what I teach my colts from the very beginning is I take one rein, tip your nose, and I get those hindquarters around. The reason why this works so well is it gives me a little bit more leverage. It's easier for me to get my horse to yield with that one rein than it would be to try to get them to stop pulling on two reins if they're in a panic situation. The other reason it works really well is the horse is still allowed to move his feet. He can still move his feet in a yield. So I'm not completely making my horse feel trapped, because if my horse is panicking, I'm on his back and he's panicking and he says, I want to run. And I'm pulling on him as hard as I can, telling him, don't run, you have to stand still. Well, sometimes the horse will go, okay, fine, I can't run. Maybe I'll flip over, or maybe I'll buck you off, or maybe I'll rear up, or whatever. They're going to do what they can to get their feet moving again. So by yielding, I'm telling the horse, hey, I'm controlling the situation, but you can keep moving your feet if you need to. But if they're in a yield, I can ride that. I can ride a horse yielding its hindquarters around 100 times. I can keep control. If you got that horse in a hindquarter yield, meaning their one back foot is crossing in front of the other back foot as they move those hindquarters around, not only, again, you're allowing them movement, but when those hind feet cross, it is very difficult for them to buck, bolt, rear, all of those things that can cause us to fall. So those are things that I don't wait until the horse is in panic to practice, because again, if that horse does go to that fight, flight, or panic, they're not thinking, they can't take in new information. But if I practice that hundreds of times in a controlled situation and I get that horse really in tune with, hey, if I sit down and I take your nose to the side, you yield, and I get them so soft with that, then when I'm on the trail and I see the bicyclist coming, I'm going to slide my hand down that rein and just be ready. And if that horse goes, oh my gosh, I'm really scared, I put him in a yield, and they hopefully remember their training, even if they're not perfectly calm.
Yes, absolutely 100% agree. And it's so hard to practice these kinds of things because I like how you call them fire drills, practicing slightly upsetting things and how to control them and how to develop that relationship where the horse feels like he can move his feet so he doesn't have to panic and go, oh my gosh, I have to stand still and get eaten. For the rider to be able to anticipate that these are the typical go-to behaviors when my horse is slightly upset or slightly more upset. A lot of people, I try not to think of it this way, but a lot of people think of training as teaching the horse to not react. Whereas I try to think of it as learning how the horse generally reacts, how to channel those reactions into behaviors that allow us to stay safe. So that, because I've it's been my experience that when you teach the horse to not react, he's going to not react until he overreacts. And that's when you have that horse that has the explosion. He never spooks. He's always quiet. He'd always stand still. And then you don't have an opportunity to practice the small reactions, to practice getting a little bit naughty and getting it back under control. So yeah, lots of fire drills and teach those behaviors before you have to, if necessary, start having people or other horses or, use those herd behaviors to your advantage. Be out with a horse who doesn't have those giant reactions, with a rider who doesn't have the giant reactions. So your horse can help to mimic, and you as a rider can help to mimic those things. And best of luck, Kendra. Those are tough ones. That was a tough question to start with. Woohoo!
Yeah. And it's like I said, great question. And I'd say the other half of that equation is, I think of it like teaching the horse where home is. So in the beginning with a Mustang, for example, teaching him to face me and then releasing pressure or rewarding him when they do, that's not naturally rewarding to the horse in the beginning. But if I build a very strong history of, when you're giving me two eyes, I'm relaxing everything. I'm loosening that lead rope. I'm petting on you. Maybe I'm giving you a cookie. And I just practice that hundreds of times. Just look at me if you're in trouble. Look at me, look at me, look at me. When you do, everything's quiet. Everything's going to feel good. It's like the most satisfying thing in the world when I am leading a Mustang around, maybe in a new place for the first time, and they see something scary and they tense up for a second and then they look at me because they're like, oh, I know where I feel the most safe. And if you can be that for your horse, sometimes you're not in a herd situation and you are that horse's herd. So if you got to find a way to make that horse look to you for help instead of trying to find it on their own by running away.
There you go. And then as the trainer, who is the safe place, you have the obligation to make sure that you train in a fashion that you don't inadvertently set the horse up to fail. And that's a huge responsibility as the trainer, to recognize when you're going into territory that either you and or your horse are not ready for. You need to take smaller steps to get there. Because I think that's a mistake a lot of us make, is we work on that trust part and then we unintentionally screw that up. I go, oh, shouldn't have done that. I asked for that problem. The nice part is, for the most part, horses are very forgiving of that. And you can take 4 steps backwards and work your way towards it again. Great stuff. Who's next on the list?
Okay, let's see here. I've got a few questions. We've got a question from Jordan. How to deal with a mouthy young horse. She says, I have a 3-year-old gelding that has always been very mouthy. He's not mean, but playful, and gets more mouthy when he is bored, like when he has to stand for the farrier. He's also smart and waits for the farrier to pick up a foot and then grabs a hat or belt or whatever he can get his mouth on, because he thinks no one will get after him when the farrier is under him. He's gotten much better now, that he's in work, but still has his moments. I've tried the busybody from Thin Line. I'm not sure what that is. It might be the little thing that goes under the lip, but I could be wrong. And that entertains him for about 10 minutes, but then that's about it.
Ooh, I got
it.
some on this one. You go ahead.
Okay, I'll let you go first.
I'll go first. This pretty much describes Scooter.
Oh, perfect.
Scooter has been mouthy since the day we met him. He has always been mouthy. He's a very interactive pony. He wants to be actively part of everything. And this is a really hard one because, and if Scooter was a competition horse that had things that had to happen and things like this, he would make me crazy. He's very hard to train because of this. The best way to get Scooter to stop doing this is to take away what he wants, which is your presence. He wants to interact with you. So if you're nearby, he wants to be part of the action. So whenever he gets mouthy, I either walk away if he's tied, just leave, or if I'm holding him in my hand, I just take 4 steps away, 5 steps away, the length of the lead rope, whatever it takes. And if he tries to come to me to continue interacting, I have to do that, make the lead rope make loopy loopies. So he goes, ooh, yuck, don't do that. And I will sometimes turn my back on him or turn 3/4 of the way from him. So he can't make eye contact with me. Just, sorry, you're not in my space. I'm not in your space. He's not allowed to eat. He just has to stand there and be bored. And if he settles, I have to have my timing just right because he's a very smart pony. When he settles and he's quiet and he's like, okay, I can stand here, be patient. Then I will come over and be in your presence again. The hardest part of that whole scenario is my timing. It has to be impeccable, and I don't have good timing. Be getting after him, I'm using my air quotes, getting after him, or creating is that a negative reinforcement? Is that what you call it? If I was to go towards him or yank on the lead rope or something like that, does not work.
I would call that positive punishment. If you're thinking of terms of addition, subtraction. So my horse bites the lead rope. So what I do is I kind of pop the lead rope. So he goes, oh, that doesn't feel good. I'd say that's positive punishment. And then what you were talking about in the very beginning would be negative punishment is he wants to interact with you. But if he's not doing it like a gentleman, you take away the thing he wants. So that's negative punishment and positive punishment. If we're being all animal sciencey.
Well, you may as well use science to our advantage, right? Science is much more accurate. So that's what worked for us, Glenn and I both, and Scooter. And when we got him, not only was he very mouthy, wants to interact, he was super head shy. So that tells me what the process used to be. He used to get the shank yanked on, or he was struck. Super head shy. Even back to about his withers. So that kind of gave me some information. I'm not going to continue that. That's not productive for anybody. So how have you dealt with this? Because I'm sure you've had mouthy horses.
Yes, I actually have one in training right now. So it depends on the horse and what's happening in the moment. But one epiphany I had with this particular behavior, I was actually working with a trick trainer who does, a lot of like movie work and circus tricks and all that kind of stuff. And we were standing around talking, and I had my horse next to me, and my horse was standing right next to me. My horse was getting kind of mouthy, and, I want to put my face on your arm and that kind of stuff. And it just became kind of a cat and mouse game between me and him. Like I was trying to shoo him off, and then he would wait till I quieted down, and then he'd get mouthy again. And finally the trainer was like, why don't you make him stand back there? Like, why give him the temptation? And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. And so, I learned that during moments where, okay, maybe I'm talking to my friend, or I'm waiting to go into the class or whatever, where I'm holding my horse, but I'm not really interacting with him in training. I just make him stand back 5 or 6 feet and just take away the temptation entirely. Just that way we're not fighting with each other. He doesn't have the temptation to like mouth on me or do anything like that. So we don't get into a big fight. So that's number one. I would say any horse you're working with, whether it has this particular problem or not, I want to train any horse that if I say, hey, you go stand over there and you be okay by yourself, you would not believe how much that helps them all around. Most of the horses that I teach in clinics, when they're in this new space and they're nervous, they are mauling their owner to death. And it could be boredom. It could be, I'm scared and you're the only one I know, and I want to be right on top of you and sitting in your front pocket. But the very first thing that I usually do with these horses is I say, you get over there and you stay away from me. You keep 2 eyes on me. I don't want you like turning around or wandering off or anything. You keep 2 eyes on me and you stay back there. So I established that first. And anytime I want to send my horse out of my space, so if they're being really mouthy or something, I'll just say, hey, why don't you go over there? So that will do a lot to help prevent the mouthiness in the first place, is just don't give them the temptation. I would say also, kind of piggybacking onto that, in general, you want to do exercises with your horse where they just need to stand for a while and be okay with it. So whether that's teaching them to stand tied for a certain period of time or teaching them a ground tie is so helpful. And building up their emotional control and mental stamina to just stand. That way, when the farrier comes, that horse is like, oh yeah, we've practiced this. So you hopefully will prevent the horse from getting bored after 10 minutes. In cases like specifically with this horse, like where he's mouthy with the farrier, I would say develop a game plan with your farrier. And I've had to do this with some young horses where my farrier will do the front feet and then we take a break, and I'm going to take this horse over here and just move him around for a little bit and say, okay, you stood for 5 minutes while we did the front feet. Let's move your feet a little bit. And then when you're ready to stand, I'll lead you back to the farrier and the farrier can go and do the back feet. So for a young horse, it can be really hard for them to stand and have all 4 feet trimmed, and especially if they're getting shod. And again, talk with your farrier about this. Don't just like start moving the horse while your farrier's underneath them. I've had to tell my farrier, like, hey, wait a second, I need to work with this horse and let him get out of the way. And, be respectful. And then when I'm holding that horse for the farrier, I will hold that horse. We're not going to tie him. We're not going to give him, I don't put my horses in cross ties for the farrier. I just don't have cross ties, but I'm not going to give that horse a chance to move his head around and nibble on the farrier or grab his hat or his bat. I'm going to keep that horse's head straight. And if he wants to nibble on me, that's where I might say, okay, let's move your feet a little bit until you want to stop nibbling, and then let's go and stand for a little bit. So practicing this on your own, I will practice holding my horse's feet for a long time. I get my horses to where I can do it in the middle of the arena with that rope on the ground. I can go around and pick up all 4 feet without issue. If I get that bare minimum done, then they're much better for the farrier. So, it's just going to take some time to build up that mental stamina.
Yeah.
And then
it's a little bit like horses who have difficulty standing to be mounted. One of the ingredients is, well, you only mount once every time you ride. So if they have a specific behavior, for example, standing for the farrier, take the time to practice those skills more often, and they'll get better at them sooner. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the
it sounds so easy when you say it.
It's just that easy. But no, I've dealt with little ADHD baby horses, and it's just one of those things. Building up their stamina, and sometimes just the magic of time and growth will also help to eliminate that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. The joy of young horses.
For first-time horse owners and new riders, finding the information and support you need can be challenging. That's why Equine Network has partnered with Sentinel and Absorbine to bring you My New Horse. From important horsekeeping information and how-to videos to social media communities, exclusive experiences, and more, My New Horse is your one-stop shop for riders of all levels and disciplines looking for easy-to-understand horse care information and guidance. Start your horse ownership journey today. Visit mynewhorse.com.
So we have time for one more question. We have more than one listed here. So who's going to be the lottery winner?
Ooh. Okay, let's see. We got the question. This one's from last month about showing. This is from Kimberly, and it has to do with competing. So, kind of related to the training tip. But she's showing her half Arab saddlebred. She went to a clinic and show, did really well, but DQ'd on the handling course. Following weekend, went to a regional championship for dressage and sport horse. Warm up was just okay, a little tension, tight in the neck, not spooky. So we had some issues there. Got through the first test, not at all like the ride the week before. For the first time ever, I ended up excusing myself from the second test as his canter wasn't right. The next day, I scratched my classes after realizing he struggled to hold a canter. Could it be muscle soreness? Maybe we need to call the chiropractor. So even though it was the right decision, I'm so disappointed, frustrated, and mad. How do I deal with this? I question everything I did. Woulda, shoulda, couldas. I feel like I wasted money. First off, you're not alone. I have been there. I've been there many times. Second off, I would not say it's a waste of money. It is experience for both you and your horse. Now we're going to take the possible health issues and put those aside. You'll know whether that needs more investigating or not. I would say, this is a question that just deals with showing young horses and how to get more consistent and, feel like you're really going somewhere with your horse. I had an old boss tell me once that it takes 5 years to learn how to show. And boy, if that isn't the truth, I would say 5 years minimum, because it's like a whole other discipline from training. And you're dealing with so many challenges, especially if it's a horse you're getting to know. You're dealing with hauling them out, being at new places, being able to figure out how much warm up my horse needs. Do they need a half-hour warm up? Do they need a few minutes of warm up? Do they need this supplement? Do they need this? Do they need this? And that there's no way to figure that out except for quote unquote wasting your money, going to show, having it not go well, have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what the heck do I have to do next time. So, I was talking about Remy earlier. I've had him since 2018. So what is that? 6 years. Now the first maybe 2 years after the makeover, I didn't show him very often. We just played around at home. And, but the last 3 years that I've been showing, or really 2.5 years that I've been showing, it's taken every bit of that amount of time. And, before I could consistently go to a show and get consistent scores every time. And even then we'll go in a pattern and something crazy or stupid will happen and it just doesn't go well. And unfortunately, that's the challenge of showing. And this is a horse who's pretty even keeled and calm. It's still really tricky. And it's taken me every bit of the last few years to get to know my horse and know what kind of warm up he likes and what kind of practice is required at home for him to be a really good show horse. So don't beat yourself up too much over it. It takes a lot of time and a lot of shows. And sometimes you'll have to go and scratch a class because things just aren't feeling right. Sometimes you'll go 1 week and just win everything and feel like you're on top of the world, only for the next week to not have it go so well. So I would say, most of what I'm seeing is unfortunately part of showing. But the good news is, good news is the more time you get out there with your horse, you're making a better horse, you're getting to know your horse. It does get better, I promise.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The first thing to do is not beat yourself up over it. This was, and that's hard to do. Again, it's one of those things that's so easy to say. And this is something that I literally have only gotten comfortable with, I would say, in the past 3 years. Not beating myself up over competitions going not the way my head thought they should go. I competed very little in the past 25 years because of that. So I tried to get it succinct because I don't want to run long on things. Things that you can do to help alleviate some of the emotional and mental stress of getting started. If I remember right, this horse is relatively new for Kimberly, if memory serves, to help reduce those stressors a little bit. You can drop down a level. In other words, compete at a level that you say, easy peasy. Oh my gosh, that's not even a challenge. Or I'm overqualified. Some competition venues or disciplines allow you to drop down and compete at a level you are overqualified for, and not accrue points. In other words, you can compete at those levels, but you're not going to be taking ribbons away from people who are still qualified at those levels. That's something you can do. You can not enter a class at all. Go in, do the warm-up, go home. Set yourself up for success so that what you plan for your competition day or weekend is so easy. Oh my God, I know I can do this. Do that and get your emotional confidence back and your horse's emotional confidence back. Something you can do too, because the rider is a big ingredient. If you want to compete, if you're a competitive person and if that's what fires your fireplace, see if you can't borrow a horse that's tried and true, that you can just take your riding skill set, place it on that horse, and things are going to go comfortably to help. Because otherwise, some people, if they can't compete in a class, why bother? If that's an ingredient, take advantage of that. And one of the most common ones I see that allows things to go wrong is they put their goals for that competition too wide. And that's something I've preached for my entire career, but I still do it to myself. Narrow that goal. If your horse struggles with the canter, don't make the canter part of your goal. If the canter goes out the door and a canter sucks, fine. It sucks. It sucks at home. Focus on, this competition, the other aspects of our competition are going to be amazing. I'm going to have fantastic trots. I'm going to have fantastic accuracy or fluidity. And narrow those down a little bit. Reese over in the Dressage Radio Show reminds me of that regularly when I whine at her. Narrow your goals down a little bit. So those are just a couple of things. Again, these are all easy to say, hard to implement. Maybe write them down on a dry erase board and see which pieces might fit for you and your horse. And it's going to take time. Competing with a new horse, even when the horse is a perfect fit for you, training is going well, learning the process of competing with you and that horse together is time consuming and unfortunately cost boatloads of money.
And it is okay to feel your feelings. I would not hold it against you if you went back to your tack stall and cried it out, because
throw something at the wall, preferably an apple or something.
Yeah. Don't feel your feelings at your horse, but it's being frustrated and upset, totally valid. Feel the feelings, get through it, and know that tomorrow's another day.
Yeah. Vent on the auditor's page. It's fine. We understand. We've been there.
Yes.
And speaking of been there, for folks who want to stalk you appropriately online, hire you to do a clinic, train a horse, etc., where are they going to find you online?
You can find me on Facebook at Mary K. Kitzmiller or Mary Kitzmiller Horsemanship, or on my website, marykitzmiller.com.
There we go. And auditors, thank you very much for submitting your questions. Horses in the Morning will be back again tomorrow with more fun and games. See ya.